Good evening. Welcome to the City of Hartford's Public Works, Parks, Recreation, and Environment Committee. Today is Wednesday, I almost said May, February 10th, 2020. It's 5:30 p.m. HPA-TV will be broadcasting tonight's City Council committee meeting live on Comcast TV Channel 96 and Frontier Channel TV 6032. It will also be streamed live on HPA-TV.org and the HPA-TV Facebook page. It will then be made available for future viewing on the HPA-TV YouTube channel. Tonight, joining me on the committee are Councilman Nick LeBron and Councilman John Gale. I don't believe we have any other council people. I will have folks go around. We have quite a few people. So in an orderly manner, can we, I don't even know how to do this, have people introduce themselves? Why don't I call your name and then just say quickly who you are? Amelia?
I'm a junior and I'm part of CCL.
Dora?
Hi, I'm a sophomore at Loomis Chaffee School, and I'm also a part of CCL.
Thank you. Elliot?
I'm also a sophomore at Loomis Chaffee, and I'm also part of CCL.
Emily?
Oh, Emily Weckman with 2 Design, part of the Hartford Tree Canopy Action Plan.
Okay. Grace Yee, I know you're with the city. Where are you? I can't see you. Grace, are you there? All right, we'll come back to her. Heather?
Yep, Heather Dion, City Forester.
Jack Hale?
Hi, I'm chair of the city's Tree Advisory Commission.
Jen Pavlik?
I'm a member of the Citizens Climate Lobby.
Thank you. Attorney Jim?
Corporation Counsel's Office, City of Hartford.
Jordan Korn?
Hi, I'm with CCL as well.
Okay. Karishma Lawrence?
Hi, I'm also with CCL.
Director Oliver?
Hi, Kim Oliver, City of Hartford, Department of Families, Children, Youth, and Recreation.
Mark Dowd?
Hartford Department of Public Works, Parks.
Maddie McCann?
Hi, I'm also part of CCL.
Okay. Director Looney?
Michael Looney, Director of DPW for the City of Hartford.
Neil Chaudhry?
Neil Chaudhry, I'm with Citizens Climate Lobby, and I'm also the chair of the Science Department at Loomis Chaffee.
Pat Doyle?
Hi, I'm Patrick Doyle, Executive Director at Knox.
Roy Hincliffe?
It's Ray Hinchcliffe. And
Ray Hinchcliffe, sorry, say Ray.
That's fine. I'm a resident of Berlin and a member of Citizens Climate Lobby as well.
Roger Coons?
Yeah, pretty good. I am Roger Coons. I am the state coordinator for Citizens Climate Lobby.
Shubhita Kambli?
Shubhita Kambli, Sustainability Director for the City of Hartford. Good evening.
Hello. Sylvia Barisi?
Hi, I'm Sylvia Baresi, and I'm part of CCL.
And last but not least, Troy C. Stewart. You're muted, Troy. You're still muted. There you go.
I'm Troy C. Stewart, Assistant Director for Family, Children, Youth, and Recreation.
Welcome, everyone. Our first agenda item is a presentation declaring a climate emergency, and our presenters will be people we have just recently met: Neil Chaudhry, co-leader of the Greater Hartford chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby; Ray Hincliffe, the co-leader of the Greater Hartford chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby; and Roger Coons, Connecticut State Coordinator for the Citizens Climate Lobby. So I do believe we will have a presentation, and then if my colleagues have questions, Councilman LeBron or Councilman Gale, we will ask them at that time. So gentlemen, please present.
Thank you very much. And we will be joined by some of our volunteers here as well. So good evening, Madam Chair, councilors, and committee members. Good evening also to Director Kambli of the Office of Sustainability, and to those gathered for the update of the Forestry Division, and to those watching at home. I am so pleased and honored to be speaking at this meeting of this committee of the great city of Hartford. My friends and I are here to request that this committee support the passage of a climate emergency resolution by the Court of Common Council of Hartford. A climate emergency resolution, briefly defined, is a document passed by a governing body to directly prioritize and act on the problem of climate change. We have prepared such a resolution for your review, which we hope you have since received. With the time you have graciously given us today, we hope to make the case for passing this resolution and to address your questions and concerns. Our goal is for you to leave this meeting feeling strongly that passing this climate emergency resolution is the right thing for the City of Hartford. Those gathered here to make the case comprise a nonpartisan group of residents of Connecticut from the city itself and from its surrounding towns. Most, though not all of us, are members of the Greater Hartford chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby, a national organization with chapters in every congressional district. Though we've all come to this problem along different paths, we are now together, united in our hope for a just and vibrant future, and in our conviction that a climate emergency resolution is a necessary step along that shared path. Now, we've already had an opportunity to introduce ourselves individually, so I'd like to hand it over now to Maddie, Elliot, and Dora, who will begin our presentation by expressing their gratitude to the City of Hartford for actions already taken.
All right, thank you, Neil. So we would like to acknowledge with gratitude the many actions the City of Hartford has already taken to address climate change. These actions represent the care for the environment Hartford's leaders have. They also show the willingness of the City of Hartford to progressively address the current climate crisis. We would like to thank Hartford for having an Office of Sustainability and for Hartford's Climate Stewardship Initiative, which works to implement projects related to the city's climate action plan. These projects include the Bright Green Hartford program, the Energy Equity program, the Energy Improvement District, and the Plastic Bag Ban.
The City of Hartford received an impressive silver certificate from Sustainable Connecticut for its many efforts to help our environment. These include encouraging public transit, supporting zero-emission vehicles, and having a watershed management plan. Lastly, we'd like to acknowledge Hartford's community resilience in fighting to maintain a sustainable environment.
I'd now like to discuss why I'm grateful for Connecticut's sustainability efforts on a more personal level. I have been an international student in Connecticut for 5 years now. Growing up in a small but very sustainable town in China, I had the privilege of enjoying the outdoors, whether it be riding a bike around the neighborhood or blowing bubbles with little kids in the park. I was truly grateful to find out that Hartford, my new home, is very aware of the climate emergency and has taken action to ensure that young people like me and many students in this meeting today can continue to create memories outside. I know that me and many other international students in Connecticut are impressed by Hartford's dedication to keeping Connecticut sustainable and taking the lead as the capital. And we all appreciate Hartford's beautiful environment. It's one of the many reasons that a lot of us are proud to call this amazing city our home.
Thank you, Dora, Elliot, and Maddie. I'll now ask Ray to briefly address the question, just what is a climate emergency resolution? And Ray, you are muted.
Thank you. A climate emergency declaration is similar to an emergency declaration that a government would make to address severe weather events and other disasters. They are documents that put the government on record in support of taking emergency action right now. These resolutions vary, with many governments including local climate impacts and specific climate targets in their resolution. But at their core, climate emergency resolutions focus municipalities on slowing and adapting to climate change. They act as both a beacon and a magnet to set a destination and pull together a city's policies and actions to increase their pace, their efficiency, and help with budgeting. Municipalities including New Haven, New Britain, and Middletown passed their climate emergency resolutions to underscore the importance of immediately addressing climate change and setting the agenda for addressing its impacts. Karishma and Sylvia will now describe why passing a climate emergency resolution is so important.
As the state capital, Hartford holds a unique position of influence over all of Connecticut, including the residents, workers, towns, and the state. Action on Hartford's behalf through a climate emergency resolution not only takes strides towards a decarbonized future for the city itself, but also encourages this integral economic transition in communities throughout the state. Decarbonizing the economy means moving away from fossil fuels and towards renewable energy sources in more sustainable communities. As mentioned, a Hartford climate emergency would encourage such resolutions on greater levels, namely statewide and federally. With these larger climate emergency resolutions would come state and federal budget reevaluations and potential funding through Connecticut for large-scale environmental action. While we're tackling a global problem, it can be easy to lose sight of the personal, local accounts that make this resolution so important. Sylvia will share her take as a Hartford resident now.
Hi, my name's Sylvia, and I've lived in Hartford for 13 years. Growing up in Hartford has brought so many memories, ones including the great outdoors. When I was younger, I spent countless hours playing outside with my neighbors. Whether it was sledding on a snow day by the sunrise overlook, running through the sprinkler bought at the Farmington Ave Walgreens, chasing after the ice cream truck, riding the carousel at Bushnell Park, or riding bikes up and down Oxford Street, we always loved being outside. Another advantage of living in Hartford is proximity to Elizabeth Park. Elizabeth Park is the perfect place to take walks with my dog, catch free concerts in the summer, watch people get married, and hear languages from all over the world. However, as the climate has gone downhill, so has the enjoyment of spending time outside. Our sledding time is cut short by warming temperatures, the roses in the garden dry up easily from droughts, and biking around the neighborhood is less enjoyable on days when the air quality index rises. Often, I see giant school buses emitting fumes that linger in the air. Hartford is the perfect city to start the lead on climate activism because it is the capital and leader of our state. Once we start, other towns and states around us will follow our lead. Hartford can be the leader of a movement that will enable my children and younger generations to live healthy lives in the city we all love. Hartford residents of all ages will benefit from taking action now.
Thank you, Sylvia, for your testimony, and to you and Karishma for your explanation of why we need this resolution. So I'd like to take some time now to talk briefly about the contents of the resolution. You've received it, and I hope you've had a chance to read it. And I'd like to just start by summarizing it briefly. In the whereases that open the document, we have established the context for the resolution, the extensive scientific evidence, the dire projections, the scale of the problem, the history of action in Connecticut, and the unequal distribution of costs and benefits associated with our current energy system. That section culminates in the call for Hartford to declare a climate change emergency. In the second half of the document, we call on the City of Hartford to commit to particular actions. Specifically, we call on the city to accelerate its own actions to address climate change as laid out in the Climate Action Plan, to ensure equitable investment of resources to support the most vulnerable and combat environmental injustice, to commit at least 0.1% of its yearly budget to climate actions and investments, to divest its employee pension funds from fossil fuels, and to advocate for policies and laws at the local, state, and federal level, including carbon pricing. And we're glad to speak at length on any of these actions, but for right now, I'd like to take a moment just to touch on this last point, an endorsement of carbon pricing legislation. Now, I don't need to tell you that the City of Hartford's own actions are vital to this effort. Every level of government, including the local, must be involved in order to achieve the scale of the transformation which is required to secure a safer future. But its advocacy for policy at the state and federal level are just as vital. This is a local problem, but it is also a state, regional, national, and global problem, and policy must reflect that reality. We believe the City of Hartford has a role to play in advocating for effective policy at these levels. And we single out carbon pricing because economists agree that putting a price on carbon pollution is the single most important policy we could enact to draw down emissions. Now, the Transportation Climate Initiative, which was recently agreed to by the governors of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Washington, D.C., and Connecticut, is one example of carbon pricing. This initiative puts a price on emissions from the transportation sector and is intended to lower emissions from that sector by 30% by 2032. A broader carbon price would put a fee on carbon-emitting fuels at the source, the mine, the well, or the port of first entry. Ideally, this price would escalate over time in a predictable way to incentivize a long-term planned transition from fossil fuels to low or no carbon technologies. Economists around the world agree that this policy is essential to meeting our climate goals. Now, the key drawback of carbon pricing is the burden that it puts on the end users, especially low-income end users, who have the least money to spare to pay extra and who are the least responsible for the present crisis. And that burden is why we support carbon fee and dividend legislation, which distributes the money collected by the fee to every legal resident to offset the costs of the energy transition. And we'd be very happy to get more into this policy as the committee wishes in the Q&A section. But I wanted to introduce it here and to really emphasize the role that we see the city of Hartford playing in shaping the state and federal laws necessary to bring climate change under control. So Hartford would not be alone in passing a climate emergency resolution or in endorsing carbon fee and dividend legislation for that matter. Maddie will now share the good company you will be in if you do so, and then Jen will share with you some of the endorsements this resolution has gathered.
All right, thank you, Neil. Now you might be wondering who else has done this. In 2019, New Haven and New Britain both declared a climate emergency. In 2020, Middletown also declared a climate emergency. And lastly, in 2019, the cities of Stamford and New Haven endorsed a carbon fee and dividend legislation. Now I will pass it on to Jen, who will introduce which endorsements we have collected so far.
Thanks, Maddie. So at the local level within Hartford, we have endorsement letters for declaring a climate emergency from the Ebony Horsewomen, Green Campus of Trinity College, Sunrise, Connecticut, the Keeney Park Sustainability Project, Save the Sound, and the Emmanuel Congregational Church. At the state level, as Maddie said, other cities that have endorsed a climate emergency by declaring one themselves are New Haven, New Britain, and Middletown. And then also at the state level, organizations that have endorsed carbon pricing include People's Action for Clean Energy in Simsbury, Rise Up Mystic, the City of Stamford under Congressman Jim Himes, Connecticut's Electric Vehicle Club. And then we also wanted to point out that according to the Yale Program on Climate Change Communication, 72% of Connecticut residents want a requirement that fossil fuel companies pay a carbon tax. At the national level, 126 local US governments and jurisdictions, 20% of which are in the Northeast, have declared a climate emergency. That means that 10% of the US population currently resides in a district which has already declared an emergency. Chuck Schumer has also advised Biden to declare a climate emergency. At the national level for carbon pricing, the state of California is using cap and trade. The Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative in New England endorses carbon pricing, and the current Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, supports a carbon tax. Lastly, at the international level, 3,500 economists around the world endorse putting a price on carbon as a tax or fee to fight climate change, and 820 million people worldwide live in a jurisdiction that has declared a climate emergency. And the UN Secretary General has asked leaders around the world to declare climate emergencies in their areas.
Thank you, Jen and Maddie, for describing this growing movement to declare climate change an emergency and take rapid action. I'll turn it over to Amelia now to conclude our presentation and take us into the Q&A phase.
Thank you, Neil. My name is Amelia Huba, and I am a junior at Trinity College. I come from upstate New York, a place which is bountiful with mountains and protected forests, where I was lucky enough to attend nature camps every summer. I chose Trinity for its location within a wonderful city because I wanted to be able to leave campus and explore. I've gotten that chance, finding nature in the beautiful parks and trails in and around the city. Yet through my studies, I've also seen how the environmental struggles of Hartford extend beyond a typical lack of urban green spaces. The incinerator in Hartford services over 70 towns, but mostly pollutes communities in the city. One of the largest polluting facilities in the state, the incinerator creates toxic ash in the air, which we can infer is related to the increased reports of asthma from those living in close proximity to it. The inefficient and dangerous facility is scheduled to be shut down, but the communities already affected by its waste deserve justice. These types of facilities, those with clear detriment to the community around it, are nearly always in neighborhoods whose residents can't afford to move out and whose concerns are not always heard. This incinerator fits this definition of what environmental justice aims to eradicate. The creation of a new waste-to-energy plant would be counterintuitive. Hartford deserves clean energy from a source that will not make our communities ill. Connecticut has already passed a bill related to the discussion of environmental justice, which is an imperative element of any dialogue about climate. We've included environmental justice in the draft declaration we're submitting, and we ask that you consider the draft in its entirety as a declaration that must happen soon. My fellow volunteers have given testimony to and explanation of the importance of this resolution. We as residents across the state respectfully request your leadership in bringing a climate emergency declaration resolution to the City Council. We offer our support, expertise, and time to work with you during this process, and we are happy to answer any and all questions you have pertaining to any of our presentation tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. So I believe we're into the question and answer portion,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
All right. I will start with my colleagues. Councilman LeBron.
Thank you, Councilwoman Rossetti, and through you, Madam Chair. So thank you, everyone, for taking their time to come and present today, and for making it and teeing up this resolution very nicely. I do have a couple questions. So the first question I have is this 0.1% of its budget to critical climate action. And maybe the question is not for the citizen CCL, right? We're going with that acronym. Yeah. So the question is, yes, so that way I don't have to keep saying it. So it's we have our Office of Sustainability here, correct? Is that correct, Councilwoman?
Yes, we do. We do.
So how much are we, Ms. Cambley, how much are we currently spending on our efforts?
I would have to come back to you with that number, Councilman LeBron. We have activities across departments, and we have investments in community organizations too. So it would be an analysis for us to conduct, and we're happy to do it.
So, I mean, I'm gonna just throw out some round numbers. So, you know, let's say 1% is, you know, 5 million. I mean, are we spending over $1 million or under $1 million? I mean, I would think we're spending over $1 million, right?
I would hesitate to guess right now.
Okay.
So yes, let me get back to you. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. And then I'm interested in how the fossil fuel CCL, what have you guys seen in terms of disinvestments in fossil fuel agencies? Has there been any success on a local level, state level, or national level that you guys know of that shows any of those government entities disinvesting in fossil fuels?
Yes, I think Jordan might be able to take that. You're muted, I think, Jordan. Well, are you unmuted?
There you go.
There you go, Jordan.
Sorry, I just got this text from Jordan. Jordan's fire alarm in her house is going off, which is why she's hesitating to unmute herself.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe someone else can answer that.
I mean, is it like a practice? Like, is it a drill or is it a real fire? Like,
because if it's a real fire, get the hell out, okay?
Exactly.
Stay on the call.
This is the kind of dedication.
Too much. Way too much, Jordan. Okay.
Yeah, that's the drill. So,
can someone else answer Councilman LeBron's question?
Sure, Councilman LeBron. There is widely expanding disinvestment from fossil fuels from not only cities like New York and the state itself, a lot of schools, a lot of universities, a lot of companies. BlackRock has developed some very aggressive and progressive portfolios. And Jordan, just wave when you're back on.
Okay.
And, okay, there you go. Take it.
All right. So the Biden administration has made it a lot easier for pension funds and 401ks and different retirement funds to invest in programs angled at ESG funds. So there's a lot of sort of ESG indexes and ESG ETFs that function very similarly to like the traditional investments your pension fund might be invested in, like the S&P 500, for example. And not only that, but as we continue to move into green economy on a national level, those types of investments are expected to do better. And that's one of the reasons why the Biden administration has taken away the disincentives from the retirement funds, which main objective is to be these safe investments. They've moved away those disincentives.
Thank you, Jordan. And through you, Madam Chair, just following up with Jordan. Jordan, can you give me just a quick top 5? What are the top 5 fossil fuel companies in America? Do you know that?
I can help with that if you'd like, Jordan.
Yeah, Roger, you can take that.
Okay. So we have in the United States, of course, ExxonMobil is just about the largest. And after that, we have the Chevron Group, and we also have BP, which is established corporations in the United States. And so as we look down the oil companies, the top 5 include mostly oil and natural resource companies. And they are all aware of the transition to more renewable energies and have, in fact, started renewable energy groups within them. They are also very concerned about the price of oil and divestments from that. In fact, Exxon was just taken off the S&P 500 because they fell below the required earnings and shareholders' payments. And that's another significant benchmark that what Jordan was talking about in terms of these non-fossil fuel investments is a trend for the future.
So through you, Madam Chair, I have another question for Roger. Roger, so these corporations are understanding that there is a movement for change, right?
Yes.
There's a growing movement for change. If you does CCL see them as a partner for the growing change? Like I'm gonna just give you like an example. Like I see the commercial for the green algae to make energy, right? Like, so, you know, I'm at a 5th grade level with this stuff. So, you know, excuse me, but, you know, so you see those things and you think about these big corporations and they're trying to make the trend and they're trying to buck the trend and get ahead of the curve. Disinvesting from them, we may be disinvesting from cutting edge technology to transition in that direction. Or am I off base with that thought process?
It's because of their investments are extraordinarily broad. And the first part of your question is, are we talking to them? Yes, we are. In fact, before the pandemic, we would have in-person meetings twice a year in Washington, D.C., and we have invited ExxonMobil, and they have attended our meetings and talked about carbon fee and dividend, carbon taxes, investments into renewable energy. So the way, and I am an economic geologist, that's what my PhD is in, so I've worked in the energy field fairly extensively. And one of the key things that the energy industry has accepted, not happily at first, but they know this is going to happen, is that there will be a carbon tax or a carbon fee and dividend bill. They have accepted this. They have also endorsed some form of these types of bills that have come before the House of Representatives before. So they know that's going to happen. They have also the infrastructure to make business decisions that they can come along with this transformation. So somebody like Exxon with 50, 60,000 employees, there's a lot of skilled labor in there. And all of these people are good people. They're like you and me. And they can make this transition to cleaner energy. That being said, this is not going to happen overnight. And so the transition away from fossil fuels in the main area of making electricity and in ground transportation is a big move. We will still need fossil fuels for a while for aviation, for the military, for certain industrial functions such as steel making, where furnaces that use coal or natural gas they're exploring with arc furnaces from electricity directly, but those things need some time to transform. So they can come along and change some of their businesses and come out really quite profitable. And they're pretty good at this. So I used to work for the world's largest mining company, and they're pretty savvy on how industries change and how they can continue to make money and grow in a transforming economy. We've done this before.
Thank you. And then just a quick comment for you, and I know I'm probably messing up the name through you, Madam Chair, Mrs. Cambly, if along with the document stating how much we are committing to of our budget, can we also get a listing as to how many employees are dedicated to this field? I realize there's probably cross collaboration,
yes,
you know, and people who have jobs where a part of this is their job. or using Director Oliver's term, are doing such stuff out of the side of the desk, but just any kind of efforts that or people in terms of human capital are dedicated to the efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman LeBron. Councilman Gale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, let me say thank you to all of you. That was a phenomenal presentation. You're quite well organized. We certainly appreciate people who stick to the point and who it's clear you practiced. I'm going to spend no more than 1 minute, and that's really good. That keeps everybody's attention. So great technique. I must say, as somebody who attended, and I trust you guys are familiar with this, I attended the first Earth Day when that occurred in Philadelphia. I was there in Philadelphia. I was there when the Environmental Protection Agency was created and Clean Water and Clean Air Acts were created. And I've been following this stuff all of my life and working here in Hartford to try to advance all of these agendas. So I'm with you 100% on this. And as I said, I'm very appreciative of your support. You should know just this week, just on Monday of this week, the City Council passed its legislative agenda indicating a couple of its priorities, among which included things such as making the bottle bill more robust to include more products, to try to get more recycling there, as well as a demand that the waste energy plant be removed from Hartford so that we're not continuing to burn, so that we are not continuing to burn 70 other towns' garbage.
John, are you timing yourself, Councilman Gale?
So that's an inside joke because that's my phone is usually used for timing other speakers. So yeah, I mean we want to get rid of Mira, and we have moved on a lot of fronts, some of which you may know. Besides those that I just mentioned, we have instituted textile recycling in a textile recycling program that unfortunately the purveyor fell apart on us. We're looking at recycling of combustibles right now, and we certainly appreciate any and all support along those lines. I absolutely love the concept of a dividend and need you guys to continue to push that. Hartford, as you may or may not know, we have taken the burden for most of our existence of the issues that concern the entire metropolitan area. Metropolitan area of 1.2 million people. Hartford's 125,000 people, but we have all the hospitals, we have the universities, we have all the cultural institutions, we have all the religious institutions, and we don't get a dividend for those things. And the dividend that we do get, which is called a payment in lieu of taxes, is never in my existence been funded anywhere near fully. And that leaves Hartford really holding the bag. So I want to applaud you for your efforts, but by God, please, and let me excuse that expression, please work for that dividend. We're happy to do our part, but we got to make sure that this is equitable for us. Thank you.
So if I could add something to your comment.
Certainly, Roger.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And we have submitted the carbon fee and dividend to the House of Representatives. It's Bill HR 763 in the 116th Congress, and it will be reintroduced in the 117th Congress. And there is a similar bill in the Senate and a parallel similar bill submitted as a bipartisan bill by Senator Coons and Braun, both from Florida. Braun is not from Florida. And so the reason we're asking for this climate emergency is because it's a mechanism that can umbrella all of your efforts and help pull them together And I'm really glad you mentioned the greater Hartford area, because this can also help knit together what other towns around you are doing and optimize and prioritize things that are going to be most helpful. And I will tell you that our plan here, we're working on 21 cities across the state. 3 of them have already passed this. And once we get, hopefully, Hartford and another dozen or so, we will present this to the state's General Assembly for a statewide climate emergency. And we will really be pushing that there is state funds and federal funds that come to the cities and help you pay for these things, because your budget is, as we know, not enough. And so there is real meaningful climate actions that come out of this, and we are very aware that we also have to help get cities funds.
So to that point, and thank you to my colleagues, and again, I want to start with thank you to the presenters, Amelia, Dora, Elliot, Karishma, Jordan, Sylvia. I don't know if I missed anybody. Really great job. It gives me hope to see you present, and that's really important. To your point, help to the cities, and I think, and help to Hartford, to Councilman Gale's point, it's more than help. We bear the burden of many things, and not in particular just this. We are asked often to be the resource for many things, but then we bear the burden of many things, and then people don't want to hear it, whether it's housing the homeless, or many nonprofits, or we could go on and things that we do well and we're proud of. But we do need to be singled out, and we do need to be looked at as someone that does more than their fair share. I'm just going to be honest, does more than their fair share day in, day out. So what I'd like to say, and I think my colleagues covered most of the really important, we certainly, this resolution in its entirety, I'm going to be honest with you, it's something that we have to kind of look at, because first of all, it's pretty comprehensive. It's pretty long. I don't know, Councilman Gale would probably know. I don't know if anybody's ever put in a 4-page resolution, but very ambitious on your part. And all I know very important, but I think we want to talk to our Office of Sustainability. We want to talk to the mayor's office. We want to all be on the same page. So Councilman LeBron, Councilman Gale, how do we want to motion this back to favorably, but not the resolution itself?
Well, Madam Chair, I don't believe that this has been sent to us by council. So
when we then we'll just say that we're going to take the resolution that you've submitted to us into consideration, and we will then be submitting a resolution that we will craft. Is that
yes, I think that would work fine. That we, we're going to have a committee report that will reference this presentation, and I'm certainly willing, and I think Councilman LeBron will probably agree that we're willing as a committee to work to take this resolution and submit this or something very similar to council for action.
I just want to be clear that it probably will. It will not be exactly as it is, but it will reflect the depth, meaning, and intent of what you have. Councilman LeBron.
Yeah, and maybe through you, Madam Chair, maybe this is a question for Corporation Council. Can we vote, to receive the resolution as part of our report? And so that way it is documented that the resolution is received. I don't know if we, if that makes much of a difference. And I don't know, Madam Chair, whatever you think.
Yeah, Jim, because even if we receive it, we're not going to vote on the resolution. We'll receive the report. Jim, what do you say?
Well, I suppose you could vote that you have received the resolution and you have heard the presentation in support of the resolution, and that it will be considered in the future by the council. I guess you could do that to memorialize what is going on right now.
Right.
Correct. I think the memorial.
So So
I make a motion to memorialize what's going on right now.
And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of that? Aye. Okay, that passes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. You're certainly welcome to stay on and listen to the next piece, but you also do not have to stay on. So I thank you for joining us, and I'm sure we'll have conversations in the future.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, and
Thank you.
if there's anything that we can do to be supportive through the revision process or any other piece, please let us know. We'd be eager to help.
Oh, don't worry, Neil. We'll get a
So
hold of it.
do we have your contact information?
Yes, Charmaine has all of it.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
So that
Thank you for
brings
your
us
time.
to, thank you, agenda item 2 which is a presentation discussion of Hartford's tree canopy action plan and update of the forestry division. And we have again, Shubhita Kambli, Sustainability Director, City of Hartford, Mayor's Office of Sustainability, Grace Yee, Infrastructure Assistant, City of Hartford's Mayor's Office of Sustainability, Director Looney, Director of Public Works, Heather Dion, City of Hartford Forester and Tree Warden, and Jack Hale, Chair of the City of Hartford Tree Advisory Commission. So I hope your presentation is as organized and efficient as the last one. Just kidding.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Chair and honorable council members, for the chance to talk about our tree canopy action plan with my colleagues at the city, at DPW, and the Tree Advisory Commission as well. As you might know, our office works with city staff across all departments and community stakeholders across Hartford to implement projects related to the city's climate action plan, which was mentioned during the previous presentation, and now the city plan as well. So in both of these plans, residents and city officials really recognize the severity of climate change and the need to take immediate action. We will be circulating results from 2020 climate action activities shortly. I just want to let you know and give you that highlight in advance. As for our conversation today, in terms of activities related to the city plan and climate action plan, there are a series of very ambitious goals, including aggressive targets related to the maintenance and planting of our trees. We have more than 500,000 trees in the city, more than 560,000 trees in our urban tree canopy. They do bring more than $5 million worth of ecosystem benefits every year, meaning that they help us improve public health, help prevent localized flooding, and also reduce our air temperatures. This is particularly important in our community where there are a number of environmental justice issues, as was also mentioned during the previous presentation, and particularly high asthma rates. So the Tree Canopy Action Plan calls for up to 3,000 trees planted every year. Heather, together with her new tree crew, has been really busy with the maintenance of our tree canopy, particularly in light of increasingly severe and frequent storms. She also helps to enforce the tree ordinance to keep our residents safe. So to support Mike and Heather's DPW team and meet our very ambitious goals, our office had secured a grant to create this Tree Canopy Action Plan, which is before you today. The plan synthesizes different strategies and targets across a variety of previously created plans, programs, and documents to create a more comprehensive implementation path from where we are to where we'd like to be. So this plan is the result of input from dozens of stakeholders, including our Tree Advisory Commission, Jack Hill is here today, as well as local nonprofits and city staff. There is in the plan an equitable tree planting strategy by neighborhood, which is super important. Tree species recommendations to help us ensure that the right tree is planted in the right place, and a maintenance strategy specifically tailored to our city based on an existing tree inventory and the data in that database. Public outreach will also be critical in terms of implementation of this plan. There's a budget in the plan, which we'll share with you a little bit later. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Mike, who will talk a little bit about the plan from DPW's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Shubhita and members of council. Thank you for having us tonight. Yes, the Tree Canopy Action Plan 2020, as Shubhita mentioned, collaborative effort that started off with the creation of a tree resource management plan by the Davie Resource Group, which is sort of a sister document to to our executive summary for the tree canopy action plan, and involved DPW, particularly our forestry division, with Heather leading the charge on that, and our tree advisory commission, as well as Schubert of sustainability. This plan, from a DPW standpoint, we see this as giving us a good roadmap, which we always knew we needed, and I think are very grateful that we have this document now, because we've always understood the importance of trees at DPW, and we want to see more aggressive action taken in terms of improving our canopy throughout the city. I think right now we're at about 25%, and the goal is to raise that canopy coverage from 25% to 35% over the next 50 years. And that may sound like an extensive time frame, but that is just how long it takes trees to mature and really provide additional canopy coverage. We've seen a lot of things just from our DPW operation that really kind of drove home the point of having a good roadmap as to how we get to a better place with tree canopy. When I began working at DPW back in 2017 as the acting deputy, I remember that winter, Heather and I were traveling around during a series of nor'easters that we had, where we had some snow, but we also, perhaps more significantly, had high winds that brought down large numbers of trees around the city. And being relatively new to the DPW world at that point, I was really struck by how many trees were just dropping branches and how many trees were coming down. And Heather and I had lengthy discussions about that, and a number of things that have afflicted our tree resources over the years, from pests like the emerald ash borer to just a disease which has been more prevalent because of drought conditions that have made the trees more vulnerable. And then the seemingly increase in severe weather events, as well as the difficulty in trying to maintain over 600,000 trees in a city with a small staff is not very easy. So a lot of these things became apparent that we needed to come up with an action plan that could show us how to effectively get away from what we were doing, which was necessary work, which was taking down a lot of sick, diseased, dead trees, cutting up ones that had already fallen during storms, and get away from just removal and disposal, which, while necessary, doesn't get you to the canopy goals you'd like to get to. In fact, it sets you back. And so I remember one conversation Heather and I had where it was like, we've got to get to a point where we turn the corner and start adding back rather than just subtracting, although we'll always have to do maintenance and removal just from a public safety standpoint. But we have to be able to get back onto a tree planting track that starts to rebuild from this pretty significant hit that we've taken here. It's not just in Hartford, it's statewide. You'll see comments from other towns and articles in the Current about how they're facing a similar thing, and they're not really sure what they're going to do because they just don't have the funds to deal with it. And so the great thing about this Canopy Action Plan is it does give us a proposed budget at showing us what we might have to be looking at going down the road 10, 20 years in terms of investment to improve the situation, which is very useful for us from a planning standpoint. Again, we're very thankful for all the hard work of our departments and our community partners who've engaged with us in this, and Jack's leadership on the Tree Advisory Commission. So very proud to be here tonight in support of this from the DPW perspective. And I think at that point, I'll just, stopping at that point, I'll turn it over to Jack and Heather to go into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of the plan and what we have before you tonight.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Good evening, Madam Chair, Councilman Gale, and Councilman LeBron. Thank you for taking the time tonight to hear about this incredible plan. As you know, I am Heather Dion, City Forester, where I have held this title for almost 9 years. There are two big topics, environmental justice and climate resiliency, that strike home here in Hartford. When I drive through certain parts of the city, there are hardly any trees, and it is so hot, specifically during the summertime. There is a relationship to income generation of household, as well as race and ethnicity in these areas. Combining this with the severe droughts, high-intensity storms, and invasive insects, we are nearing a point that if action, as recommended by the Tree Canopy Action Plan, is not taken, the future of this city is at risk. What I cannot emphasize enough is the drastic decline in the health of our urban forest in a very short amount of time. This not only goes for Hartford, but the entire state as well, as Mike mentioned. The urban heat island effect is real and directly impacts the health and vitality of the residents and business owners' ability to thrive. Our trees need help. Over the past several years, our program has rebuilt its foundation, with our city tree inventory being conducted, investment in tree software, the revision of the tree ordinance, strong tree focus in our zoning codes, the hiring of 3 tree trimmers, the purchase of additional equipment, strong leadership from the Tree Advisory Commission and Sustainability Office, and the creation of the Tree Canopy Action Plan. It is demonstrating as being the leader in the state. What we need to keep in mind is that policies, even at the state level, are now being built off of what is happening in the capital city. I would like to see this continued leadership role to show others what is possible, to show others that Hartford does not think of their trees and canopy as a luxury, but as a necessity, a part of infrastructure that is supported as much as streetlights and pothole repair. This will provoke the necessary change statewide, possibly even nationwide. Another role that I play is as chair of the Connecticut Urban Forest Council, who was recently awarded $400,000 in funding to distribute statewide to municipalities and nonprofits whose task focus is on environmental justice and climate resiliency. The state awarded a total of $1 million to support urban forestry efforts, something that had not been supported at all the past few years, and not to this extent. $300,000 will be allocated to Yukon and $300,000 to a small grant program titled America the Beautiful. As it has been recently demonstrated, Governor Lamont and Commissioner Dykes of Deep understand the need for trees and their maintenance. Our largest trees are our biggest assets. They do all the heavy lifting and provide the most benefit to Hartford's residents. Not that tree planting isn't important, it's just that we need to be doing both. Our canopy is at a 3-year or less maintenance cycle, meaning that our street trees and park trees require some sort of maintenance at least every 3 years. Prior to the drought in 2016 to 2018 and 2020, we could have gotten away with a 3 to 5 year maintenance cycle. Unfortunately, this is no longer the case. The implementation of the increased staff recommended from this plan from 3 to 12 would provide the Forestry Division the ability to manage our trees in the most cost-effective way. The need for qualified boots on the ground and chainsaws in hand to conduct the very important pruning and removals is monumental. Currently, the tree industry is lacking in qualified tree workers and municipal arborists. Perhaps if these jobs were created, we would find an influx of new men and women who want careers in trees. Besides struggling to keep up with planting and tree maintenance, our team hasn't had time to grind stumps, and very little enforcement is done because of limited staff. Public outreach and education are other items that are crucial to really making this change possible. Getting everyone to understand that trees are the most cost-effective way to reduce the impacts of climate change is imperative. The support of publicizing this plan and its components would help. A marketing campaign and hiring tree planting coordinators would also make a huge difference. My goal is to provide a promising future for the children of our city and state, and I am asking for your personal support to execute this policy. We need to find a way to implement the Tree Canopy Action Plan. And I will conclude with a quote from our next speaker, Jack Hale. The time for trees is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Very nice. Jack?
Yes. Yeah.
Time for trees is now.
Thank you, Chair Rossetti. Thank you, Councilman Gale and LeBron, city staff members. I think you're running out of time. Is that correct? So I'll try to be as brief as possible. My colleagues have mentioned.
Let that be noted that Jack's going to try to be as brief as possible. Just kidding.
Yeah, there is no try.
No, you know what? This is a very important subject. You know, I love a tree canopy. Go ahead.
Yes, the canopy. I mean, who knows what the canopy is? It's the amount of land that is covered by trees. So you heard that we're at 25% now, or about that, and we have demonstrated that we could get to 35% with plantable areas in the city. And to do that would have a tremendous effect on the health of the city. We have been trying to get a handle on this little by little since 2007, when we did our first survey of the trees in the city, and that's where that 560,000 tree number came from that Shubhita mentioned earlier. Since then, we've had 2 different canopy assessments. We've developed the tree ordinance, a new zoning code. Then in 2019, we did the tree inventory and the tree resource management plan that came from Davie Resource Group. And then it was all capped off by the Canopy Action Plan. And I see that Emily Weckman is here from 2 Design. She really drove this process. And the result has been a phenomenal resource. It's tied all those pieces of work we've done in the past together and turned it into something that can be a real resource for carrying this city forward. It's something that Heather can keep on her desk, something that Mike can keep on his desk and refer to. It's like, what are we supposed to be doing? It's there. They did an amazing job of tying together all that research so that there's a basis. You're going to hear a big budget number, but there's a basis for it. It's not just fantasy. They really worked hard to figure out what that should be. So Mike mentioned that the goal, but the overriding goal, is to get to 35% canopy cover within 50 years, which allows the time for the trees to mature that we plant now. And the key is something that's been alluded to before, is to really look at trees as critical public infrastructure. It's just like streets, it's like utilities, electrical utilities, water, gas, whatever. It's like housing. It's like our parks. They're public infrastructure that you can't walk away from. It's there. You can let it fall apart. You can let the bridges collapse. But it's really not advisable. And that's we want to see the city looking at its tree canopy as critical public infrastructure. And what that means is that we can't rely on the relatively small amount of money that the Parks Trust Fund and the tree account kicks off as the basis for budgeting. It's nice to have that there, but the budget has to be based on real need and real goals. What we mentioned, and this is another thing to hang on your refrigerator or whatever, there are 4 parts to taking care of our canopy. 1 is the preservation of existing trees. And that's the key. Those trees are the ones that are providing environmental services right now. And they're the ones which, if we lose them, it creates a big hole in the canopy. We lose a lot of services there. The maintenance of those trees is also critical. That's taking care of the insects and diseases that show up. It's taking care of broken branches that can be the vectors for diseases. And also making sure that the city residents feel safe around those trees. So maintaining those trees is critical so that we don't lose them. Planting is a third chunk that has to happen. If you don't plant trees now, you don't get a canopy later. You know, you can't fake it. You can't wait 20 years and then plant them, because then you've lost all that time. Finally, there's the removal that Mike and Heather both referred to. We have to remove trees that are dead and dying and hazardous so that they don't cause problems for our citizens and so they don't increase the liability of the city. I want to mention a couple of things, another couple of things so you hang your hat on. If you look at the Canopy Action Plan, you'll see that early years we're talking about planting at least 1,500 trees a year. Now that's more than what we've been planting anytime since in the last 10 years. So, but that's critical just to get going on replacing missing street trees. Within 5 years, we want to increase that to 3,000 a year. And that's what it's going to take to get to that 35% number. It also gets into the staffing that's necessary to do that. And if Grace is still on, I don't know whether she's here. Grace, do you have the ability to put up that budget sheet?
Yes, I'm here. And apologies earlier for being unable to introduce myself. I had some technical difficulties. I hope everyone can see my screen now.
Yep. Well, yes.
There we go. Look at that. This is a little bit of a condensed version of a page from the Canopy Action Plan, and it shows what we're talking about. The tree planting, you can see there are 3 different options for tree planting, and you look over in the second column, it shows you some budget estimates. The ideal version is option 3, which is a collaborative arrangement between the city and a nonprofit to do tree planting. But the budget for year 1 for the planting is $1.4 million. And it should stay at about that level for the first 5 years. Watering and taking care of those young trees for each year in the first 5 is about $170,000. That's cash. Staffing is another issue. Heather mentioned that eventually we need to get to a forestry crew of 12 people. I don't think we'll make it this year, but that's the target. That's what has been computed as necessary in order to be able to do the work that needs to be done. I'll point out these numbers are not fantasy. They're based on what we have figured out as the cost per tree to plant trees. It's just a working number. Each one is different, but the per tree cost, which includes buying the tree, planting it, taking care of it, mulching, watering, and all that, we're talking about a per tree cost of about $750. To really establish a tree is going to be more than that, and that's one reason we need to be talking about additional staff. The young trees need to be trained so that they'll grow well and provide the canopy services that we want in the longer term. I'm going to mention one more thing so that we can wrap this up. And that is that engaging our citizens is going to be critical to being able to realize this. For one thing, half of the trees in the city are on private property, and those trees need to be maintained as well. And the city can't do that. People need to take charge of their own property, whether they're homeowners or whether they're institutions or corporations or whatever. Engaging private property owners in the care of our canopy is critical. It's like making sure that people are taking care of their house. You know, they're not letting it go to turn to blight, where they're making sure that it's a respectable place. They're not parking dump trucks in their front yard, that kind of stuff. We need to engage our private property owners, our homeowners, and our renters for that matter. There are a lot of folks who are interested in this, who are willing to volunteer. But in order to do that, we're going to need some cash and we're going to need some staff. Heather is Superwoman, but she cannot do everything. And she hasn't taken the workshop on cloning herself yet. So we're stuck with only one. But for instance, we've got this report, which, as some people have noted, is pretty darn long, but we don't have any money to print the thing. It would be really good if people had hard copies of this where they could refer to it. It's available online, but that's all. And there will be other communication we need to do. I'm going to cut it off there. As you all know, I could talk about this stuff for a lot longer, but the Yukon women are started playing 5 minutes ago, and I got to watch that.
Well, we must have our priorities, don't we? As a non-sports person, yay! So thank you, Jack. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Shubhra, and where's Grace and Director Looney, and I see Petrell is here, and I don't know if anybody else. I know my colleagues probably want to answer some questions. I do want to just say before I forget, I want to thank Charmaine Craig, who is the executive assistant to me and all council people, helpful, but how much work she put into tonight's meeting, and I really want to thank her for that. So, Councilman Gail LeBron, questions? Yes, go ahead, Councilman LeBron.
So through you, Madam Chair, the first question I have is for you. Mr. Hale mentioned that there was a time something. Is there like a certain time we have to be off? Because fate like off?
Well, we don't want to go all evening. We try to be efficient. So yes, so talk quickly.
I mean, I'm not watching the Yukon women.
Want to go watch Yukon, so don't drag it out, Councilman. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll try to limit my questions. I think the first thing, Mr. Hill, and through you, Madam Chair, you mentioned the printing piece. I know, there's a 339 document, but there's also a 20-page document that in terms of printing, at least something tangible, would that be more feasible in terms of printability? And the folks that need to have it in their hand, and for budget-wise, maybe it's not your question, but, for Ms. Dion or Heather?
I believe it has already been printed, the executive summary, and we're waiting to just get it into people's hands. And it does contain some of the key elements of the
So
document.
I'll try.
I will point out, though, that in the full document are copies of other reports in the particularly in the appendices, and they're very useful.
I wasn't able to read it, but I eyeballed it. So I saw that there was other reports in there. So in terms of, I'm gonna get to my higher level questions, and then let's see how long how much time they take. One of the things, the interesting piece that I read in all the documents is there was a notation about decreasing crime benefits. There's a decreased crime benefits to answering trees. So Ms. Heather, can you elaborate how that is?
Sure. It's as a similar practice to what the Chinese do, which is called forest bathing. you know, when you want to calm yourself, you go out in the woods. When you have an environment that is full of trees, that is not as hot, right? Because there's more shade, there's less environmental pollutants around, all of that. It's just better for the human psyche. People are happier. So.
Okay. And through you, Madam Chair. So you said the Chinese do something with trees? Is it like a program? I'm sorry.
Well, it's something that they call forest bathing, where
Oh, so it's like just going out and like you would.
Right.
Got it. So like I love water and I love the ocean, so I go in the water. It's something like that. I got it.
Yes.
Got it. Obviously, I'm born and raised in Hartford from the project, so like, but I appreciate this stuff because it's things that I never noticed, and I would agree. And I think the larger question that I have, I took a longer look at the priority map, and through you, Madam Chair, there was a Likert scale from 1 to 5. And it just seemed to me, and the things that were resonating with me in that Likert scale from 1 to 5. Thank you, Grace, for putting that up. I assume you're going to put up that priority map. Maybe not. I don't know. Should we wait through you, Madam Chair? Okay. All right. There we go. All right. So through this priority map, one of the things that struck me is there seems to be a correlation in the areas that are ones, and ones being the lowest, with the neighborhoods that have the highest concentrations of poverty, lower socioeconomic status, lower home ownership. And so the question that I want to tee up is, how did we get here, right? Like, you know, how did these neighborhoods end up being ones? And maybe it's a question that folks can't answer here. I would love to know that, because, you know, one of these is the area that I grew up in. And how does this happen?
Councilman LeBron, if I could just jump in, the ones are the neighborhoods that are the most in need for trees.
Right, the most in need, right. And that's what I'm saying, it's the highest, right, so I probably said that wrong. So on a Likert scale, they're the lowest that have trees, like they don't have enough trees, so they need more trees. And so the correlation is these are the highest concentrated poverty areas, lowest residential, you know, home ownership, lowest, you know, all of that stuff. How does this happen?
Madam Chair, I think I can respond to that. For one thing, neighborhoods that have fewer trees are less desirable. So those areas end up having cheaper housing. They're not as much in demand. So that ends up being where folks with lower incomes end up. It's just straight housing economics. So how they got fewer trees is a similar thing. If the people who live in the area are wealthier, have more political engagement and connection, they're more likely to be able to get trees planted in their area. It's a self-perpetuating process.
So thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So, and Mr. Hale, thank you for answering that, because I imagine it's probably a much more complicated question and really like it's baked into a broader issue. But like, are you saying basically it's like redlining, like like historical precedents in terms of urban neighborhoods and housing and development? There's a correlation between disinvestment in neighborhoods, along with a correlation of a decrease of having trees? Would you?
Yes. Yeah, the simple answer is yes. It's the same kind of dynamic that has led to housing disinvestment and so forth throughout the city.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, and it really ties back in with our earlier presentation, where we're looking at how do we reverse the inequality, the inequity in the city, and tree planting is part of it.
Got it. And so in terms of through you, Madam Chair, last question, this priority map in terms of investment of planting trees, is it safe to say that we're going to focus on the ones first? I was trying to look at the plans, and again, there was a lot of documents there. So whoever can answer that question, maybe it's through you, Director Looney, or Heather, or I'm not sure, but like we get money to plant trees, we go and put them in these areas where they're ones first.
Well, through you, Madam Chair, I can answer that a little bit, and then I'll let Heather jump in, Councilman. And the simple answer is yes. That's where I think we'd like to start. The longer answer is that it's a bit more complicated. One example is driving through the Clay Arsenal neighborhood. One of the things that's just so readily apparent is the housing stock is very dense, and the streets are quite tight. And there isn't, if you want to do street trees in Clay Arsenal, there isn't a whole lot of room between the curb and the actual housing itself to get in a tree that when it matures will have enough room to grow. So we're going to need to be creative in how we get trees into those neighborhoods because historically they've just been developed so densely, probably even more so in the past. When we had more housing units in those neighborhoods. So that's part of the challenge is wanting to have these areas be sort of the priority, for lack of a better word, for future funding as we go forward, because they are so tree starved at this point. But it's gonna take some creative solutions to figure out how we get more canopy cover in those areas. Heather, I don't know if I'm off base on that, but
no, I think you nailed it, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, and through you, Madam Chair, I just want to make a statement. And so, when we talk about this investment in communities, and we talk about the tree importance and how it can essentially raise the economic viability in these neighborhoods. I think in terms of prioritization, I understand that it'd be difficult in these areas, but my goodness, these areas are struggling in so many other places. So if we can, focus on investing, honestly, I never looked at trees as an investment. So thank you for everyone for impressing this upon me. But if planting a tree is going to invest in these neighborhoods that are struggling, then, then I'm all for it. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. And I will say before we go to Councilman Gale, when it does come to you from people more learned than you, the importance of trees, I can remember when it actually happened to me through certainly Charmaine and Jack and others. It does just change your whole opinion on trees and the importance and what it can do for not only a city, an individual, a neighborhood. So Councilman Gale.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of comments, just following up on what we've heard on how trees can change attitudes, and I'm sure somebody out there will be able to correct me, but I think I have the basic scope here. In New York City, if I'm not mistaken, some years ago, they embarked on a plan for planting 10 million trees. I believe they planted 1 million trees a year. I don't think they quite got to 10 million, but I think they got to 7 or 8. And I think this was probably started under Mayor Bloomberg. So this goes back quite a few years. But the net result for New York City was phenomenal. And we all know that in the last 20 years, and that's during the time when New York City did this, that the city became this incredibly popular place, and areas of Brooklyn all of a sudden became untouchable real estate, and so much of it was a function of all the trees. And as Exhibit A, I will tell everyone, and actually for most of you, I don't need to say anything to you, but go to Albany Avenue this summer. Albany Avenue was a wasteland, a desert, a hot place in July. with very few trees. Well, they've just planted a boatload of them. They're going to be small, but I guarantee you're going to feel the difference when you drive through, that Blue Hills area in Albany. You're going to feel the difference. It's going to feel so much nicer and so much more comfortable. So I get it. I'm down with all of this. I hear the presentation talking about 3,000 trees a year. I hear we're going to ramp up to that. I hear going from 3 to 12 employees in the city. I hear that we want to go from 25% to 35% canopy. I'm on board with all of that, but most of the people that have been presenting, well, not most, but yeah, 3 out of 5 are city employees. So my question is, you guys are right in the middle of making the business case for the budget. Are you baking this into the budget, or are you saying you are not able to bake it into the budget and you're doing an end-around run and you're asking us to put the money in the budget for this when it finally gets to council? I'm not quite sure what we as council, are you asking us just to accept
Director
it?
Looney, do you want to touch that with a long pole, or?
Absolutely, Madam Chair, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Councilman Gale. We are starting to bake this into the budget, particularly from the P side of things. I think one thing that needs to be remembered about that budget number, and I was going to mention this, is the model. There were 3 models that Jack kind of alluded to and Heather alluded to, where there's a strictly public model where the city does everything. There's the private model where you rely on other parties to do everything. Then there's the middle road that I think we all prefer, which is option 3. Thank you, Grace. Of a combination of city, nonprofit, and other entities to get to these numbers. So when it says 1.4 million, that doesn't necessarily mean we need to put 1.4 million in the budget right off the bat in the city, because there could be contributions from other areas, whether that's through grants and through other funding sources. When I was looking at the numbers and where we were talking about 1,500 trees a year to start off, that seems like a lot, but if we use 300,000 of CIP, or I'm just throwing out numbers here, that gets us probably 500 trees. And if the city can do 500 trees and nonprofits can come up with 500, and if we get a program in place where we encourage or incentivize private property owners to plant trees on their property, that counts towards our tree canopy. As Jack has alluded to, a lot of our trees are simply on private property, and we need to get private property owners involved and not just have it be a governmental undertaking. We need everybody at the table. And I think that one of the most important things that as council that I would like to see and ask of you, if I could, is the outreach component. We need to really, that was one piece, I think, of the executive summary that we didn't really touch on, was just how critical it is to conduct more outreach about the positive benefits of the trees, because what we often see is the negative, the trees falling down, the trees damaging cars, some or injuring individuals. And then, there's concern in some of our neighborhoods, concerns about tree roots impacting sewer lines and water lines. And so there's a lot of, I don't want to say negativity about trees, but a lot of people have concerns about exactly, if you have a tree in front of your house, how does that impact you? And while there are things that we have to take into consideration, raking more leaves, having to look to the general health of the tree and make sure it's not falling into a state of being compromised by disease and pests. But we need to talk more about the positive elements of trees, and that's something that I think Heather and Jack and I don't want to speak for them, but I think that's something that we're really looking to push forward that there. When you look into the report in terms of some of the numbers that Shubha talked about in terms of economic and environmental benefits, over $5 million a year. I think the replacement value of all the trees in the city is somewhere in the area of $600+ million. These are valuable assets that have very important both environmental health and environmental and public health benefits, but also socioeconomic benefits, as I talked about with our neighborhoods that don't have trees, which are I'm fairly certain affecting property values. So we need to talk about all the good stuff, and that it's not just there's more leaves to rake and trees and branches fall down, and if we have a tropical storm, you have down trees. There's a lot of good things about trees too, and that outreach component we need to get buy-in from the government side. You're seeing 3 city employees and a member of a chairman of a commission making a presentation. Yes, there's governmental buy-in, but we also need to get the buy-in from the nonprofit side, which I believe we have, but also the private side. And where we can get, that's a source of potential funding that would help augment what we're able to do at the municipal level, rather than simply trying to carry it all on our backs through the municipal budget or through the capital improvement program. So I'm sorry about a long-winded answer, but that's kind of my perspective on it.
No, thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
If I may just follow up quickly, yep. Madam Chair. Two thoughts. I certainly hope that you have the energy and the ability to take this presentation and bring it around to all the NRZs. I think that's a great way to get outreach. I'm speaking just for myself, and I bet I'm speaking for everybody on this committee. We're certainly prepared as a council to help in any way we can to do outreach to promote these ideas. Along those lines, we just received a presentation, I think at the last meeting of this committee, on the tree fund, and I think informally, the 3 of us talked about being willing to commit at least $125,000 from that tree fund. I believe, colleagues, that's the number we talked about.
Right, we have to get the right price. I think we were, whether it was you had done it, you had quoted the wrong price of the trees, but yeah, absolutely. I think we're in agreement for that.
So take that. I mean, Director Looney, if you guys are looking at taking more than that from the fund, so be it. But we're certainly supportive of using some of that fund for some of this.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councilman. That's greatly appreciated. We know you guys are there with us. So again, I appreciate that.
Thank you. So thank you very much. And I know this was just a report, so we won't a presentation. I know it's close to 7, but I do feel it's our job. Director Oliver has been here through the whole meeting, and I'm wondering, I hate to put her on the spot, if she can do a 5-minute update on what we're doing. No offense. Take your last month and do a 5-minute update. No pressure.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, no pressure at all. A 5-minute update. Well, actually, just today, Director Looney and myself, as well as our colleagues, Superintendent Dowd, as well as Assistant Director Stewart, met with Thea Montanez, our COO, in talking about spring and summer planning for recreation and what we're doing in our parks. We are doing that work also in communication with the PrAC, and really looking forward to how do we provide, opportunities for especially our children, but also families at large, to have activities, smaller groups indoors, but definitely outdoors, knowing that winter season traditionally is a little tougher for us because we usually depend heavily on our centers. We are still looking at Arroyo Recreation Center being our rapid testing center for the city. And there is conversation about a Parker Memorial and the role that it may play as a vaccination center.
But I've been told, Director Oliver, not to interrupt you, sorry, that would not negate still being able to, unlike Arroyo, that still you'd still be able to have activities at Parker, timing and space wise. That's what my discussions with the COO were.
It is. Yes, it would not be what Arroyo is. So first of all, just to be blunt, most people who are not most, but many people are going to Arroyo to be tested as they think they might have COVID. And so we need to take care of our children and our staff and our residents and make sure we don't cross in terms of our paths there. That's not what we're looking at Parker, but it is a very large operation and would have some impact. But what we're doing right now is working with her and meeting the COO, and also some early conversations with Hartford Public Schools in terms of their support potentially for other facilities, et cetera. So, but just making sure, then it's not finalized as of yet, but I do think it's important for everyone to be aware that that is something on the table, because obviously we're all very supportive of trying to get more of our residents vaccinated.
And please, as we've said before, look to us and my colleagues for support, particularly when it comes to the, I know you have two hats, but when it comes to the Hartford's public school piece.
Yes, thank you so much, because that would be a very helpful, because we know people are interested in connecting, especially during this time. Just quickly, the other thing what we're trying to do is ensure that we do have activities that are not just centered based, right? So we do have other plans that we've been working on. I know that Assistant Director Stewart is still on the line, but in particular, our Hartford strollers, our neighborhood pick and grabs, et cetera. So I didn't know if there's anything else, Mr. Stewart, you would like to add?
Yes, and also we're doing some other things dealing with cycling and biking with the community, and also we're looking at other situations where we can do more outdoor activity. So we have all that stuff in the planning stages, and some of it is being executed right at this point.
And again, Director and Assistant Director, where, as someone who's not biking or doing anything, unfortunately, where do we disseminate this information? In multiple places, multiple languages, easy for people to access, simple, where do you find it? Where do you see it? I'm not looking, but I don't see it.
Well, the first thing is that we made sure that everyone understood that we use MyRec. Recreation was always assigned to MyRec, and that's what the instrument that we use. If you go on our webpage for Family, Children, Youth, and Recreation, it will guide you when it comes to recreation to MyRec, and you will get the information there. Also, we have an Instagram page and a Facebook page that we also have. Also, we're about to go YouTube later on. So we're trying our best to move forward to get the information. We having great hits when it comes down to Instagram. Instagram is a good medium for us to deal with younger people. One of the things that we found out was that the information that we started moving on Instagram, we get a higher rating when it comes there than when we get for Facebook. But the thing is that so we're looking at other mediums where we can connect. And then when it comes down to the language, we do have it in Spanish. And one of the things that our director is working with us on is trying to figure out other sensitivity areas with other languages, because we know that we have 98 different languages.
Yes, around 90 languages spoken in Hartford Public Schools. The beauty of our department is that we have many people who speak multiple languages, including, like, for example, definitely Spanish, but also like Portuguese, Nepalese, all of these other languages. But we do want to make sure that, we are able to connect with folks. So, for example, how the COO has put out the partnership with Hartford Public Library and making sure that those languages are available. So thus far, we've never run into an issue thus far, but we also are continuing to try to make sure that we're not missing anything. So we're keeping our eyes open to that.
And one thing that I have to add to is that the Harvard Library has been very supportive of us in any type of language translation, like you said, Kim, that from throughout the year, we have been having a great relationship with them to help us out.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks to you both. That just brings us to the agenda item, which is, I believe it says other business. If there is no other business from my colleagues, I would like a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Sarah,
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you all. I believe we're all in favor. So thank you. It was a great night. I really appreciate it. And we will see each of you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Oliver. Thank you, Troy.